All right, we are so glad to be joined by a special guest here on the program. It is the one and only sports reporter for the Washington Post. He covers everything from football to basketball, golf, tennis, soccer, and things in between. He cut his teeth, as many of you know, from our radio program days. And now we've got him on the podcast with folks here in Hampton Roads, Suffolk Sun, and now he's with the Washington Post. Chuck Culpepper with us here as it's time for the national championship game coming up on Monday night as the Michigan Wolverines take on the Washington Huskies. Chuck, you got a chance to take in Media Day. How's life treating you? It should be a fun one with the Wolverines and Huskies to decide who is this year's lone unbeaten and national champion for 2023-2024 college football.
Yeah, it's there's a huge storm coming in today in Houston, and it will be some in the morning and then some in the afternoon, and some people are talking about tornadoes as part of it. So, and then the game comes right after that. So this has been a kind of a refreshing game. It's the first title game in 9 years without any team from the South or the SEC in it. We had Alabama 6 times, Clemson 4 times, Georgia 3 times, and so on. So this is all fresh and new, and maybe shows that the sport is, while contracting into fewer conferences, is branching out into more regions.
Yeah, let me get to that here in a second. But going back to the Rose Bowl that you covered, I know it was a really, really fantastic game to watch and document with Michigan and Alabama, sort of some ebbs and flows back and forth. What was your big takeaways from that, as some have questioned sort of the last call there for Nick Saban and Tommy Rees, the OC, with what they did there? Could have easily been a touchdown for Jalen Milroe if it's blocked up and executed properly. But my goodness, the Wolverines overcame some special teams miscues, some blunders there, and their defense. I don't think enough people have talked about just how great their defense was against an Alabama team that was starting to really hit its stride.
Yeah, and there was, I can think of almost no downfield passing game for Alabama in that game. I can't remember. And then I remember as the game the reality sort of settled over the game that that became something I wasn't even thinking about. And that's strange, because we've known for the last decade Alabama to have this just run of phenomenal receivers who all went to the NFL and at fairly high draft choices. And so, and we also knew that through the season, Alabama had improved in this way. And, its drive when Georgia came within 3 in the SEC championship game, I think that drive to score right after that, midway through the fourth quarter, was really impressive. And against that defense, it gave me at least the impression that Alabama had become quite more capable on offense through the year, as first-year quarterback and so starting quarterback and so on. So the idea that it was restricted, Alabama, and then when Michigan scored to tie the game with like 90 seconds left, it was right in there, and Alabama had this chance to get down for a field goal. I think got 1 first down, didn't move. So yeah, I think the Michigan defense was worth lauding after that game, and I think the Michigan defense against the Washington offense is sort of the battle royale of the season, really, because both have number 1 rankings.
For sure. And obviously a guy that was runner-up in the Heisman to Jaden Daniels of LSU, and quarterback Michael Penix from Washington, who once upon a time played in the Big Ten at Indiana, so he's familiar with the Wolverines a little bit here. Before we look at the Penix angle of things, they are going to be playing, it looks like he's ready to rock and roll. That's what he's saying. Dillon Johnson, the running back for the Huskies. How much is his effectiveness and availability going to be a key in this game as you look at this Michigan defense and what they try to do to stop the Washington offense?
I think it's a big deal that he's in the game. I think it distracts in some ways. Their receivers are kind of their that might be the best unit of any kind in the country, in the whole country. The Washington Huskies receivers, they had a banner year. They're great at contested balls. Rome Odunze, the top rated one among them, is incredible. 6'3", 216. He runs through people as well as being acrobatic and just everything you'd want. So having Dillon Johnson, that's I thought that without him, that might help Michigan somewhat to be able to focus on certain things. And so I think having him in the game, and just so familiar with that offense this year, and such a familiar presence and such a tough presence is. I think it's a big factor that is a bit of a sidelight because we think more about the receivers and about Penix, but it's a big factor.
Yeah, and as you look at Penix here, what's sort of the rub from folks as far as not just his pro potential, because there's a lot of quarterbacks being talked about with the NFL draft, first round. Do you go with Caleb Williams from Southern Cal? Do you go with Drake May from North Carolina? Do you go with this quarterback, that quarterback, Daniels, who we just mentioned? That's part A. And then B, how much is this national championship for him? He got to play on the West Coast this year, so people out there know how good he is. But for the nation to really fully grasp and recognize just how special of a talent he is, and he's coming off a semifinal game where, this, Chuck, I know you were looking more at the Alabama or Michigan game, the Rose Bowl, but he was almost flawless in that game. I felt
his precision in that game was otherworldly. It was just really, really. The story of that game, the overriding story among the stories in that game was his precision. I actually had a phone conversation with the lovely Mel Kiper Jr. during the middle of the season somewhere, and it was great to listen to him. But he was saying that that Penix is an example of a guy who now these extended period. This is his 6th season in college, so now these extended periods of time when guys can play. COVID had a big role in that, but here's injuries for him. 4 of them, unbelievable run of injuries while at Indiana. And so here's an example of a guy who his NFL standing has gone up because of this. If he had ended after 4 years, I don't know. I'm sure someone would have taken a chance on him, but now he's in that conversation, I think, close to Williams and May, and has to be based on the qualities that he's shown with this team this year, and the qualities of the fact that have been found in the fact that they have escaped so many difficult situations. They've won close game after close game, and they've pulled them out with really, really clutch things. So I think this season has just vaulted him up the charts there into somebody where where also you can see, leadership, and you can see the kind of the character that people want in the NFL.
I want to get back to those close games with Washington in a second, but it's weird to think about this with a talent like Penix in today's game of college football, where you see so many, not just in college football, the NFL, these quarterbacks that are playing that can move around and do damage with their legs, the Jalen Hurts, the Lamar Jacksons of the world. But if you're Michigan, do you almost feel more comfortable if you can get him to escape out of the pocket and not have to sit back there and just torch you over the top? Because some of the throws, like you said, with the precision, going to a Dunze and his core of receivers were just otherworldly against Texas. And I know that the Wolverines have the defensive personnel, especially the secondary, which did a good job on the Bama receivers, but they can't really feel like they want him to just go over the top and beat them. Maybe they're at a better situation if they force him to have to scramble a little bit. Is that possibly one of their strategies going in, or is that something they say, nah, that's too dangerous as well?
I haven't heard that, but if you look at the Washington season, that makes a lot of sense. That what I love about it, the way he moves just within the pocket, just that movement around the pocket itself. And let's see, I went to the Pac-12 title game in Las Vegas, and obviously you're going to have to get some pressure. Obviously, that's also a great secondary at Michigan. Even though I don't think there are any All-Americans on it, but there's several All Big Ten guys. So on the various All Big Ten teams. So yeah, I think I don't know. That's also perilous, because when those guys get out running, guys are usually running open. So I think what Michigan has and what they do, there's a scenario, a very plausible one, where that's enough to do enough to win this game.
Sure. Last few minutes here with Chuck Culpepper, the Washington Post, as we discuss the national championship game between the unbeaten Wolverines of Michigan, Big Ten champs, and the Washington Huskies, the Pac-12 champs. Check it out again. It's tonight, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. Chuck, looking at this Washington team, it is wild and remarkable to think they've won. I think it's like 9 straight or 10 straight games by single digits. So many close games. So do they feel like they're an advantage if it's a close game? Although Michigan just won one that went to overtime. What's kind of the feel and tenor of this game as far as if it's close and you get the sense that maybe Washington wants to score above the 24, 28 point mark, whereas Michigan wants it below the 30 point mark, keep it maybe in the mid to high teens, low 20s. What's your feeling on those couple of things there?
I think you've got two teams which don't know how to lose clearly, and now apparently someone is going to tonight. It's quite an equation. You see it from time to time. I remember Alabama Clemson in January 2019 was a couple of 14-0 teams. So was LSU Clemson the year after that. In those games, I could imagine maybe one side losing. I never pick games right, but I managed to pick those. But in this one, it's very hard for me to imagine either side losing, really. And Washington, you're right, has reached that point through these games. I mean, 2 games with Oregon, fourth quarter in the balance. Washington State, they run that 4th and 1 from their own 29 with 1:11 left. Very, very bold. And Arizona State at home after they played Oregon the first time, they were down 7-6 in the 4th with Arizona State getting close, and they got an 89-yard interception return. I think they might feel a level of confidence in a tight situation that's beyond anything anybody else feels, and beyond anything of what you see from anyone else in any season. I mean, I think it's been such a demonstration of coming through when you need to, that they might in that area they might feel something that it's possible, a level that no team has felt. Or I think of Ohio State in 2002. That comes to mind. They won a bunch of close games all the way to the title, and I could see that which went to double overtime, and I could see that happening here with Washington.
You're one of the very best storytellers out there, and I know images stick in your brain as you document these games and tell these stories. And for Michigan, there's a couple of different images that could come to mind. Certainly their head coach, which I know is always the big overriding storyline, and what is his future? What is this program's future? Is he going to the NFL? That's going to be talked about in the 24, 48 hours beyond this game, whether they win or lose it. But another image for me, Chuck, is Blake Corum, the running back who's run for 25 touchdowns this year, that bloody-nosed face that got turned into a poster inside the team's football facility. What's he mean to this team in this game tonight?
What a and thank you for those kind words, but what a just the emblem of a Michigan player in this Michigan era with this Michigan style that's at this moment. Just this absolute, like Jim Harbaugh was saying yesterday, he just never has a day when he's not just ready to completely, butt his head in there and his body in there and ram into defenders. He epitomizes what they are. He's just so tough and so muscular, and so that Penn State game that we're talking about, remember, and that scene, and I was there, and it was the post game, and he has that blood splotched all around his nose, and it was the image that immediately tells you so much. But if you remember in that game, after halftime, they never passed, and boy, in the year 2023, as it was then, to see that is something. I mean, we just don't see it anymore. Maybe a service academy or two from time to time, but that was who kind of a statement of who they are. That was the first game where Harbaugh was not there for his Big Ten suspension, and that face was everything that they were that day and everything that they are in general.
And our last two for you, Chuck, and we thank you for the time here. Going back away from this game for a second, and then we'll finish up with this game. Georgia was just an unbelievable performance against Florida State, which had so many opt-outs. So their undefeated season came to a crashing halt and was not the Seminoles team that we all got to see, really even pre-Jordan Travis's injury. But nonetheless, a lot of people are going to say after this game, well, I'm not sure that Washington or that Michigan is the best team out there. It probably was the Georgia Bulldogs who fell to Alabama in the SEC championship. What's sort of your response to some of those folks that feel that way or say that, which they're certainly entitled to and allowed to say that or feel that way? And we do have the playoff coming up next year as far as an expansion, so that will maybe solve a lot of these issues. What's kind of your feel as this college football season is coming to a close on how things were done and the committee's selection? Because after watching those semifinal games, it feels like they got it right. Those were four worthy teams, although Georgia had this long winning streak and had the untimely loss to Bama when they had it.
I still can't believe that, obviously anyone could lose to Saban in Alabama, but I haven't really understood fully how Georgia struggled so much in that game and kind of wasn't itself. And I didn't happen to be at that game. I was at two others that weekend on the championship weekend. So I don't really comprehend how they didn't look like themselves. I don't think they were a super team like you might have said they were last year when they went 15-0. And as far as, their selection, that's how these seasons play out. And you often get, if you look back through the history of college football, we've always had teams where at the end they were not really in the consideration, but people were saying that they were the best. I think a lot of Bobby Bowden's Florida State teams fit into this, where they had lost one early on, and then later they just surged at the end. They always seem to win their bowl games there for a while. And so, and people would say, oh no, that's actually whoever's playing these two bowl games that are deciding this voted national title or this BCS game, often you would say that there was another team out there that was maybe better than the two teams in it. And I think this year, I don't quite buy that because Georgia couldn't solve Alabama. And I thought the committee, which I think the committee is the best system we've ever had in my lifetime by far. And I thought at the moment they got it right. I thought their case about Jordan Travis not being able to play and that week in Florida State, no question about that. That was one case you could make, but you could also make a case based on strength of schedule, which theirs was 55th and Alabama's was 5th. So I always thought the committee very carefully weighed strength of schedule, which I love that they do that. People didn't used to do that so much. And so I thought I never had it was excruciating and there were a lot of good teams and worthy teams. And next year we won't have this problem, as you say. But I thought regardless of the semifinals, which did, kind of ratify what they did, but regardless of the semifinals, I thought they had gotten it right. And I think that we can't quite say this Georgia team was a super team, even as along the way we kind of thought it might be, and we don't give quarterbacks as much time to establish themselves and work out all the growth you have to work out in that position. So first year starting quarterback, maybe it's to be expected that there would be, a game in there that didn't go as well as some of the others. So I think all in all, it was the two best teams that ended up here, and I guess will be the best who ends up happy Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a very fine Georgia football team for Kirby Smart. Didn't quite get to the three-peat, but they were not, you feel like, almost that close to invincible type of team because they did have some games where they were vulnerable at times. Obviously, Missouri comes to mind, South Carolina, and some others, and they did take that loss to Alabama in the SEC title game. I'll get you on this one. We thank you again for the time. Go check out Chuck's work in the Washington Post. See him online, what he does there. Also follow him on Twitter or X at Chuck Culpepper 1. You had the neat story at the Pac-12 championship time where you had the headline of "Goodbye Pac-12 football, you beautiful league of our dreams," and this is the final game for the Pac-12 as we know it. As far as a team playing in a championship game, they finally get to the title game after years of knocking on the door. Haven't had a team, I think, play for the title game since Oregon did, but here they are against Michigan. It was a really up and down type of year for Michigan as far as the feels of it, the vibes of it, what's going on with the off the field type of stuff. What's sort of the bigger storyline of the outcome for you as you walk out of here? Is it Washington completing the undefeated season and the finale of a Pac-12 team, or is it Michigan, despite all of the controversy, the off the field stuff with Harbaugh winning it, going unbeaten? Because someone is going to walk out, without that blemish, undefeated season, and really a year that will go down as one of the best in school history. In Washington's case, It doesn't feel like they've been warm and fuzzy with the whole nation, and people realize how good they are. And in Michigan's case, there are some people that are still going to have their questions about them and skeptics out there. How about your feel for it, either outcome?
The one that grabs me the most out of all the possible outcomes is the lunatic fact that we could have the final game of the Pac-12, a champion from the Pac-12, and that we have the first playoff team from the Pac-12 since Washington in 2016-17. The first three of these 14 playoffs had Oregon in the first one, Washington in the third one, and never since. And now that the whole thing as we know it is dissolving, and, 10 of the 12 teams are running to other leagues, including Washington, to the Big Ten. The idea that we would get a champion from there right at this moment is like some sick joke to me, really, because I don't like the realignment. I've always liked the regional aspects of college football, the testing this region against that region and so on. I guess they'll still do that within the conference, but I just think the fact that here they are, and here they were in probably the best league this year. And isn't that something? They certainly had the best collection of quarterbacks, which is a long way toward being a best league. We can also look at Georgia and say that its non-conference schedule didn't show us anything. It didn't wasn't very strong, and that contributed to my final feeling about it anyway. And so Pac-12 being the best most of the year, at least, and probably all told, enough good quarterbacks, enough good teams, and to be that, and that this is the season where that happens. It's a sick joke.
Yeah, and by the way, they'll have the rematch Saturday, October 5th. As Big Ten members, Washington playing host to Michigan. He is Chuck Culpepper, the outstanding reporter and sports writer for the Washington Post. Go check out his work online and in the Washington Post. Go pick up a copy today. Chuck, thank you so much for the time. We can't thank you enough. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you.
That is Chuck Culpepper with us here on 757 Sports Talk. We'll take a time out here from some of our sponsors and come back with more at the Plex. Stay tuned.